this is Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow, and I have another very fascinating, interesting news podcast for you. And of course, next weekend, Stewart will be here with me, so we shall have even more fascinating news. And of course, he tells you all hello from the Sanchaya Resort in Singapore, and he will soon be heading on to Bali, and then of course he will be home in just a few days for November 5. I won't tell you what that's about, but hopefully by now you have a clue. So with that said, I wanted to address the Russian airliner that was carrying 224 passengers and crew that crashed in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula on Saturday after losing radar contact and plummeting from its cruising altitude. The Airbus A321 was operated under the name of Metrojet and was flying from the Sinai Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh to St. Petersburg in Russia. Now, a militant group affiliated to the ISIS state in Egypt claimed responsibility for the plane going down. However, Russia says that can't be accurate, and some people are saying that Russia says that it is due to mechanical failure. Now, I'm sure there have to have been people of prominence on board, and right now the only one I can confirm for sure is the mayor of Omsk was on board with his entourage. So who knows what was going on, and who knows who was sacrificed and why. Moving on to the Ukraine, I'm kind of putting this out there for you because I think it's kind of a strange thing. It said that Ukraine is going to the dark side and that Darth Vader is replacing Lenin's monument. Apparently, the city of Odessa recently passed a law banning communist symbols, which means that Lenin had to go. So instead of taking it down, his head was turned into a helmet, his coattails into a cape, and the helmet now serves as a Wi-Fi hotspot. But the best part of it is, it says a candidate named Darth Vader is running for mayor for the second time in a row. So what that's about, I don't know, but it sounds extremely symbolic in some way, shape, or form. So let's keep our eyes out on Ukraine as always. And China continues to grow with its news. Apparently, you might have read about the minor incident, they're calling it, that could spark war. So it's a minor incident, how could this spark war, right? In the South China Sea, because China's naval commander told his U.S. counterpart that this incident could spark war in the South China Sea if the U.S. did not stop its, quote, provocative acts in the disputed waterway. Apparently, Admiral Wu Shenli made the comments to U.S. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral John Richardson during a video teleconference this past Thursday. He said, quote, if the United States continues with these kinds of dangerous, provocative acts, there could well be a seriously pressing situation between frontline forces from both sides of the sea and in the air, or even a minor incident that sparks war, unquote. So on one hand they're calling it minor, on the other they're calling it dangerous and provocative. So here we go back and forth again. But if we want to know what's really happening, it goes further on this article to say that scheduled port visits by U.S. and Chinese ships, planned visits to China by senior U.S. Navy officers remained on track. None of that is in jeopardy and nothing has been canceled. So again, why are they putting this out there? Let's continue to watch. And you might have also heard that China is planning to build a particle collider that's over triple the size of CERN. Apparently, Chinese scientists will use its proposed circular electron-positron collider called the CEPC to study Higgs boson particles with the goal of learning more about the so-called God particle and possibly dark matter. Construction won't begin for some time, and scientists have completed the first conceptual design and submitted those plans for international peer review. And then the article goes on to say that construction will begin between 2020 and 2025 with a second phase plan for 2040. And so why they need international peer review, again, I'm not exactly sure, because I think China pretty well does what it wants to do. It says that the CEPC will likely be the largest, most expensive science experiment the world has ever seen. That sounds like China. And China is also calling for a new global reserve currency to replace the dollar. Now, Stewart and I have been telling you about this for actually the last 2 or 3 years, that China is going to continue to make a larger presence in the global currency market, along, of course, with the Russians seem to be backing that as well. And this, in my opinion, is a bid to throw the U.S. into a financial collapse, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit in a couple more stories down the way. Anyway, an ABC News report said China is showing, quote, growing assertiveness, unquote, on revamping the world economy. The surprise proposal by Beijing's central bank governor reflects unease about its vast holdings of U.S. government bonds and adds to Chinese pressure to overhaul a global financial system dominated by the dollar and Western governments. Chinese banks will soon join the London Bullion Markets Association's silver price setting process. Apparently earlier this month, the yuan passed the yen to become the fourth most used currency for global payments, as it appears increasingly likely that the yuan will soon be included in the IMF special drawing rights basket, which is currently comprised of the US dollar, the euro, the yen, and the British pound. The Economic Times of India reports that China's yuan ticks all the right boxes for inclusion in the International Monetary Fund's SDR list of global reserve currencies, the biggest international bank in China. China has also been stockpiling gold as part of its strategy to raise the stature of the yuan on the world stage. After announcing its reserves for the first time since 2009 in July, the world's largest consumer of gold has upped its holdings steadily. The Chinese gold stash increased another 1% in September. Now, of course, I always want to know who is checking these facts and figures, but this is what they're telling you. Apparently, there's a growing lack of faith in the US dollar, which may well underlie China's proposal for a new reserve currency. And to that I want to say, duh, that's what's happening in the whole world right now. And China is also deciding to abolish the one-child policy and allow 2 children. Apparently, the ruling Communist Party said that it will abolish the country's decades-old one-child policy and will allow all couples to have 2 children, removing remaining restrictions that limit many urban couples to only 1. Apparently, the decision to allow all couples to have 2 children was to, quote, improve the balanced development of population and to deal with an aging population. Now, I have told you before that I know people from China who have had more than 1 child, and when I asked them why, they said, oh, we just have to pay extra taxes and we can have more children. So that tells me that what we're hearing in the news is not quite the way that it is in China, but I'm letting you know because we all need to be educated as best as we can about what's going on in the world and what's true and what's not. And Dr. Ron Paul, this is my article I was referring about to the next big American financial crisis, is claiming that America is on the verge of a real currency crisis, the likes of which we have not seen in more than 50 years. He believes it will happen sooner than people will think, and during his recent visit in Washington, he said, quote, the way you live, work, travel, retire, and invest in America, everything is going to change. Some of it in ways most people do not expect. This period is going to be particularly tough on seniors and anyone relying on a fixed income or money from the government. Trouble is coming. Please make sure you, your family, and anyone you care about are prepared, unquote. So remember, I tell you, they always say what they're going to be doing, so pay attention. And if you haven't seen our prophecy pay-per-view webinar on our website, expansions.com, you might want to watch that because Stewart and I also talk on there about the coming financial crisis. Now, I also tell you about everything that's going on under the ground because there's a lot that's happening. And so, they're revealing about a top secret tunnel under the Grand Central Station in New York that only presidents used. And apparently the whole Grand Central Station area, the terminal, covers 49 acres, which I didn't have a clue it was that big. Anyway, apparently President Roosevelt took his own private train with a train car that carried his presidential limo. He was driven off the train car in the limo directly into an elevator that fit the length, width, height, and it was so high that the Secret Service could stand on its running boards, which brought them all the way up to the grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria. I didn't have a clue about that one. And in New York, they're also building a secret, well, it's not going to be secret, but its location right now is secret. They're going to be building an underground park. And what that tells me again is they perhaps are preparing for a coming ice age. We will find out. And did you know, I've heard about this before, but it keeps popping up in the news, so I thought you would definitely want to know or be reminded of, that there is a secret U.S. government airline that flies out of commercial airports. Now, of course, many people say that this goes to Area 51. There's no way of proving it, but we do know that these airplanes do not have the call letters, and they have red stripes, some of them, and some of them have blue stripes on them. And they call this JANET, which stands for Just Another Non-Existent Terminal or Joint Air Network for Employee Transportation. So again, they're telling you about quote-unquote secret things, so continue to watch the news for new revelations. And on the Rosetta Comet, oxygen has been discovered, which has stunning scientists. They said that for the first time they've detected oxygen on a comet. And this finding could upend theories of how the solar system was formed. An international team said that they detected a lot of molecular oxygen in the cloud of gas, or coma, surrounding the nucleus of comet 67P as in Paul. While molecular oxygen has been found in Jupiter and Saturn, it's never before been found on a comet. Quote, "It is the most surprising discovery we have made so far in 67P because oxygen was not among the molecules suspected in a cometary coma," unquote, said Catherine Altweg, one of the co-authors on the paper from the University of Bern. And speaking of outer space, we have Mars, because Mars is in the news like every day. And there is an alien hunter named Scott C. Waring who often posts about unique features, and he claims that now he has seen a bear on Mars. He claims that the bear is wandering around the Martian surface, and he says there's a reason that NASA puts its photos into black and white, because this hides the living creatures and plants that are an obvious color. He claims that he has determined that the bear's hair is real, and he concludes that the figure is a live animal. So again, you can check for yourself and see what you think. Now, the WHO, the World Health Organization, along with the France-based International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC, which is actually a part of the WHO, are claiming that eating processed meat can lead to bowel cancer in humans, while red meat is a likely cause of the disease. Now, I have been telling you that they're trying to move you toward a government-issued food, and of course that means that you're not going to want to eat meat because you're going to get sick and die if you do. You're going to be dependent on the government. Red meat, which the IARC includes as beef, lamb, and pork, was classified as a, quote, probable carcinogen in its Group 2A listing that includes the active ingredient in many weed killers. So you want to think about what they're doing, because they're saying this lower classification for red meat reflects the limited evidence that it causes cancer. But as they move that up the list, they're going to be increasingly trying to take that out of your diet. It says if the cancer link with red meat were confirmed, diets rich in red meat could be responsible for 50,000 deaths a year worldwide. Now, if you're doing your hyperspace oversoul work, of course you know that cancer comes from a mind pattern of resentment. And where the resentment is in your mind pattern, it determines where it is reflected in your body. So while they want to say these things, they're just trying to scare you into doing whatever it is that they want. And of course, as we know, many people will be frightened. Now, this I thought was a very interesting story and kind of left me a little bit perplexed about how I feel about it. So I'm going to put this out here for you. There is a family that purposefully stunted their disabled daughter's growth, claiming that this would expand her world. Their daughter is so disabled that the mother considers her unabled. At 10, she cannot speak, walk, or see anything beyond light and dark, perhaps the shadowy face, a shape of a face held inches away. And as she grew bigger, her parents feared that she would eventually become too heavy to take anywhere. So this New Zealand couple decided to give their daughter hormones to stop her growth. They had doctors remove her womb to spare her the pain of menstruation. She is now 1.3 meters tall, which is 4 foot 3 inches, 24 kilograms, 53 pounds, and she will remain that way for the rest of her life. And apparently this process is called growth attenuation. And this is an alternative. It says that an increasing number of families across the US, Europe, and New Zealand are using in an attempt to improve the lives of their disabled children. The practice is highly controversial, which I can certainly see that. Many see the very idea of stunting and sterilizing the disabled as a violation of human rights. But parents say that it helps their children preserve their quality of life. And as I said, this would be a very, very challenging decision to make if you were in this position. Apparently, back in the 50s and 60s, growth attenuation, which refers only to the hormone treatment, was sometimes prescribed for girls who were expected to grow very tall. The first case of stunting a disabled child popped up in a medical journal in 2006 when a Seattle couple wanted to keep their daughter small enough to participate in family activities as she grew up. So the doctors gave her high doses of hormones, pushed her into early puberty, stunted her growth. They removed her uterus and her breast buds to prevent discomfort. Anyway, like I said, I have I'm kind of challenged by the thought of this, but sometimes if you are in the position where that you're trying to make decisions and you're doing it with love in your heart for those people that you care about, perhaps this is kind of a decision you might have to make. So I don't want to judge it, but I think we need to be aware of it because we do know that this can also happen to healthy people for a variety of reasons, and we need to look at what's going on behind it. So keep that one in mind. There is a New York man who wants to create a sovereign nation in Utah. Now, of course, we are hearing often about people who are working on being a sovereign person and trying to remove themselves from the tax rolls and how that we're just a piece of paper and how you're chattel and so forth. So I think that this is kind of building on that story. So we'll have to see how eventually how this comes together. There is a New York man named Zach Landsberg, and he is creating his own sovereign nation called Zakistan on a remote piece of land in Utah. He has created his own yellow and red flag, of course, and those are programming colors, official-looking passports, and a border patrol gate guarded by a giant robot sentry. And he said he wants it to become a real country, and he, of course, is the president. He says that goal is not going to happen. It's impossible, but I'm going through the motions to try to make that happen. He has even created a motto called Something from Nothing. He pays property taxes to Box Elder County, about 160 miles north of Salt Lake City, but interestingly enough, he refers to the payments as tributes. And of course, we heard that terminology from the Hunger Games. He wants to make his little nation look legitimate, so the passports look and feel real, and visitors can get their passport stamped as they enter and exit the country. So let's see what happens with that trend. Now this was kind of interesting. Of course, Halloween is past, but this was a story that was trending just before the Halloween celebration that was claiming that there's a popular costume that makes kids invisible, which was worrying parents. Now, that has to do, of course, with mind patterns. So if you put on something that makes you feel invisible, it could be shrinking how you feel about yourself, your self-worth. Could also, in my opinion, have something to do with perhaps alien technology that's coming, because this popular costume, as they're calling it, is basically a stretchy fitted bodysuit that covers the person from head to toe. Yes, it even comes with a hood, has gloves and socks, and it has the person wearing them, quote, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Now, following on the heels of that, there was an article about a living shirt that morphs when you sweat, which is a new project from MIT, which is experimenting with applying biological process to fabric in order to make it react to the surrounding environment. And of course, we've been hearing about this for a long time, but again, it reminds me of alien technology. Apparently, this is called biologic and takes a bacteria originally discovered by a Japanese samurai, injects it into the fabric that morphs when in contact with heat and microorganisms contained in human sweat. It says this experiment is letting scientists move the first steps into the territory of responsive fashion and could be the beginning of much experimentation in the field of biology and its application to the fashion industry. Other researchers are also experimenting beyond controlling biological material with programmable synthetic matters such as carbon fiber able to morph when needed. So watch for that to continue to grow. Now the other thing which I had not heard about before, maybe I've heard of it but I haven't paid too much attention, was something called cryotherapy. Now cryotherapy apparently involves a chamber that a person basically takes off most of their clothes except their extremities are covered with gloves and socks, and then the chamber has nitrogen turned on for 3 minutes at approximately minus 241 degrees Fahrenheit for both medical and cosmetic purposes. So apparently these chambers have been around for 2 or 3 years. They cost about $50,000 a piece, and they have had a lot of sports figures demonstrating this, and of course a normal person wants it once they see a celebrity using it. And I think it's really ridiculous. I just couldn't believe it when I read this. But apparently these are at the health spas, whatever they want to call them these days. There was a spa worker who put herself in one and turned it on, and they found her the next morning frozen solid. Now, the parents are saying that she knew how to operate these chambers, and so they're saying that perhaps something else was involved. So the police said that they were reopening it, that it wasn't accidental, but I haven't heard anything else said about it. But I still think that this is really a stupid thing to do. And the point of it is apparently that when you get cold, of course, then it activates the blood vessels, and then everything it stimulates the temperature receptors in the skin that communicates with the brain. It inhibits inflammation, resulting in a reduction of pain and swelling, improves joint function, and so on and so forth. In my opinion, no. If you want to get stimulated by the cold, take off all your clothes, go naked, like they're saying, go outside in like 32 degrees, which is plenty cold. You don't need to go down to minus 241 degrees, and then go back inside. That's going to stimulate your temperature receptors in your skin. You don't need to go down like that. So I think people are asking for trouble by doing this. That's my personal opinion. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not licensed in healthcare in any way, shape, or form, but I think it's really stupid. So anyway, I'm not saying she deserved anything. I don't know what happened. To me, it sounds very suspicious. And here's another. Now, this one I do say is stupid for people who do this, but again, to each his own. There is a new reality show that's coming out called Buried Alive. And apparently there will be 3 contestants who will be held captive and in isolation. And they're going to be placed in coffins and will be buried 6 feet under the ground. It said some will feel claustrophobic and unable to breathe, while others will feel like they will die at any moment if they are not rescued from the coffins. Now, why would you want to do this to yourself? Producers say contestants should worry that there will be fear experts on hand to walk everyone through the process. But some of the concerns many have are what happens if someone really starts to become so frightened that somehow they could actually pass out and die. How far will these experiments go? And I meant to look this up before the podcast, but I forgot. I don't think I have it here. No, I don't. But I know that there are a certain amount of Americans or people worldwide that die every year in these reality shows. So if we go online, you can probably find that, but it's like, why would you want to do this to yourself? I'm sorry, I think this is really, really stupid. So, don't do that. And last week, I reported in Thailand about a half buffalo, half alligator type of creature. I hope you saw that video. Now we have a tourist off the Grecian coastline who captured an unidentifiable sea monster while vacationing in Greece. Apparently he was just trying to capture the unusual color of the surrounding water with his iPhone. But when he went back and looked at what he had actually gotten, the strange creature appears to pop out of the water in one photo and then disappears in the next. And they are saying that it's similar to a gray creature that resembles an elongated manatee, and to me it kind of looked like a strange hippopotamus, but look at that, that's kind of interesting. And then, again, talking about stripping naked, and I told you they're going to have people stripping naked all over the place, and they are. There's a group of 57 people in Britain who took off their clothes to try to set a Guinness Book of World Records for the number of naked people riding a roller coaster, which was set in 2010, where 102 people rode the same roller coaster in the buff, but this one failed because there were only 57 people. So obviously they knew that before they rode the roller coaster, that there weren't going to be 103 people to break the record, but they did it anyway, and they claimed that they raised over $15,000 for a cancer fund, so it was okay. So if you take off all your clothes and you do things for charity, all that's okay, right? So again, this is stupid. Don't do it. And then speaking of stupid, now sorry for that remark, but I'm going to say that anyway. There is now the human Barbie, which I have reported on before. Valeria Lukianova is now going to do start a career in music, and of course she has a wonderful first single that she's releasing called, quote, Jack Your Barbie. And so I turned it on because I thought, okay, what are the words? And I couldn't really hear too many words other than Jack Your Barbie, so I turned it right off. Anyway, she's preparing for a global DJ tour and meditative mission. Now this last part is the interesting part. The first part was just prepping you, but the interesting part is that the songs will feature her singing in, quote, an ancient, forgotten language that are, and these, I guess there's more than one, these languages are meant to induce a meditative state in the listener. To me, that sounds like there's some kind of programming going on, because if it's an ancient, forgotten language, how do you know if it's really an ancient language or if it's just programming gobbledygook that they're putting into your head? So, like I said, whatever's going on out there in the world, I hope you're using your Brown merger archetype. There's a lot of stuff out there it's determined to confuse you, to confound you, to turn you upside down. You don't know if you're inside out, literally. So you have to take a look at what's going on in your mind. And the only person that you can really trust in this world is yourself. You need to be anchoring yourself into your center. You need to be going to your source, whatever you determine that to be, God, Oversoul. It doesn't matter. Go to your inner source. Go to yourself and trust self. This month on the blog, we're talking about creating a safe space. We are talking about self-leadership, because there are a lot of people out there who will lead you, and that's not what Stewart and I are about. We are not about leading you anywhere. We are telling you and giving you tips how you can go inside and make your own choices and your own decisions and better understand what's going on in the world, and therefore make better choices about how you respond to that. So take a look at yourself, please. Anyway, I hope you've had a chance to see Stewart's video that I told you about last week. It's now approaching 265,000 views, which for us, that's a lot. I know there's some people out there that've got 1 million views. We've never gone that far before, so 260,000 plus views is fabulous. The link is on our Facebook fan page, which is under expansions. Please go there, please watch it, please like it, please share it with your friends, please like our Facebook page. And I have been telling you that we are now the first week in November. In January, which will be here sooner rather than later, we do have our week-long Hyperspace Oversoul class. This is the most intensive class we give every year. This gives you your foundational principles. We build on it. We answer your questions personally. We give you tools that you can take forward into the new year so that you can be successful in whatever it is that you choose to do with your life. And hopefully it's not to strip naked and ride a roller coaster or be a human Barbie. But if that is, I'm not going to judge you for it. Everybody's got a role to play. So it's not mine. Whatever yours is, I hope you're happy with it. So with that said, I look forward to having Stewart join me again next week. And I want to tell you thank you. Janet Diane Moria, Swerdlow, expansions.com.